Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Thursday Thread. I'm Andy Lockwood, and with me is CPA business guru Neil Guilmette. Neil, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Andy, and may it be a healthy and prosperous one. I certainly hope it's better than 2020.
You know, 2020 was a rough year in many ways, but and I know we've talked about this a couple of times, and I almost feel guilty about this. We had personally, we had a great year. We were up 13%. Over a good year the previous year. I'm looking forward to many more good years, and I hope 2021 is going to be a great year, and I think it will be. And I think anyone who's watching this can also do that, can also keep growing their business, particularly now.
Well, what I'd like to say, Andy, is that I've known you for quite a few years now. And when we started together, the difference between then and now is that you've turned your business into a machine. It functions like a machine, and it's creating an end result that you want. And if you remember many years ago, I said, if you do this right, it's like building a still. And when you build that still, you put all the stuff in the hopper up on the top and let it brittle around. And eventually you get a little drip of alcohol. And then the drip turns to a trickle. And the trickle turns to a flow. And you get your hand, now when it's flowing, you have a valve that you can turn the flow up or down to fit what you want. And you've accomplished that. You're one of the few people that I've seen that has actually created the machine. That you have your handle on a valve and you can up the flow or cut the flow down as you see fit. And that's kind of the topics I think we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and now I want to drink now. It's a little early, but last year we generated 420 applications to have consultations with me. That was the actual number. It was a lot of prospective people who are motivated to talk to me about my services as a college advisor. And I feel like if I were an accountant, or a CPA, I'd be able to do something very similar. I think the conditions are ripe, because you've got regime change. You've got all sorts of tumult, and not just in the Capitol, but with the IRS and the rules. And there's so much stuff to talk about. People need help. So I'm excited for our accounting listeners.
I think so. I think it's ideal too. And I've had quite a few clients over the last 40 years that have done what you've done. But there's a resistance factor in the accounting profession because they have to change their outlook as to how they're going to do it, because the class of 1946 mentality is so strong in the accounting profession that it actually prevents CPAs from building the kind of practice that they'd really like. Gets in the way. And, it's that's the way we've always done it in the profession.
Yeah, that doesn't usually work out in accounting or evolution.
To me, that's usually an automatic red flag.
Yeah.
Time I hear that's the way we've always done it, it's like, there's a problem.
Yeah.
So, but today we put together a pretty nice thing. You put together a pretty good topic for today. So why don't you let everybody know what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah. Well, it's I tried to come up with, if I did come up with only 5 with a short attention span, 5 things to do to make 2021 your best year ever. That's if I had, again, I do way more than 5 things each month, to grow our business. But if I had to really distill it down, that would be, so I'm going to try to cover today. And the first thing is, and this is all stuff that we've talked about before, and you've helped me a lot, think through this. So you'll be able to show me the error of my ways if I don't get it quite right. But I think the first thing is very fundamental. It's very basic. It's trying to figure out who exactly you want as a client. Some clients are a lot more high value than others monetarily. Some are a lot more high value in emotionally, in terms of making your life easy. I mean, we all have clients who are pains in the asses and clients who are a pleasure to deal with. And usually it's not really related to how much they pay us. Or actually, I would even make the argument that the more they pay you, the more of a pleasure they are, and the more they respect you, and they're easier to work with. So I can tell you personally, I just wrote a check to refund a client in full that's been working for us for 2 years, because it became very obvious to me from her what I found to be unjustified complaints, were that we weren't a good fit. No matter what I said, I couldn't get through to her. So literally 2 days ago, I just, we were trying to figure out how do we unwind like a divorce. And I was just sitting there at my desk and I was like, I'm just going to give her everything back. I'm not even going to take what I earned.
Right.
Yeah. So that's an example of me not following my own advice, which she was referred to me by another client who I actually liked, about 1.5 years ago, and I worked with her older son, and I started working with her younger daughter. It was obvious to me that the daughter was not a good fit. She didn't want to go to college, and I'm a college advisor, so there's really not a lot of room, no upside there. So ultimately, I was just tired of the mom just complaining, even when the true source of her complaints was her daughter's lack of motivation. So the opposite is, well, how do you find the right clients, the people that you want? And I think that the way to do that is, one of the buzzwords is to come up with, an avatar. You look at your own client base, you look at your who you like the most, and try to brainstorm to yourself, what do they have in common? And gradually, it's usually pretty easy. Just people don't take the time necessarily to think through this stuff. And then a picture will emerge that, here are the types of people that I seem to hit it off the best with. So in my case, it's usually people who are business owners, who have multiple kids, who meet a few other criteria. And if I were an accountant or an advisor like you are to CPAs, I'd be figuring that out also. Then that's the first step, is knowing what you want and what you don't want.
What happens very often is CPAs, because of the way they think in numerical concepts, is that their ideal client, they always start out with the ideal client, well, one who pays big fees. And they forget about the other part of it, the human interaction part. And you can have a client that pays you great big fees. I've fired clients that pay me phenomenal fees, but they're a pain in the ass to work with. And life is too short to work with people that make it difficult for you. So I have found, and all my clients have found, that when you eliminate any clients that make it difficult for you, your life gets so much better. And you don't lose money. You end up picking up more money because you've got more time to devote to the good clients rather than to the ones that you have. When you find yourself working with a client and you feel like you're like Sisyphus pushing that boulder up the mountain and having it constantly roll back down, let that happen one time and decide one more time they're gone. So you're right. Step number one is take the time to identify your ideal client and what makes them ideal for you. But along with that, you need to define the value that you bring to that ideal client that they will not necessarily get from your competitor. So it's a matter of identifying that ideal client, but you also have to determine, what am I going to bring that ideal client that's going to make them want to hire me rather than my competition? And number three, have I become conversant in my difference so that I can talk about it anytime, anywhere, in a very pleasant, non-salesy way, that you are conversant in your difference in the value that you deliver to an ideal client. And that makes great cocktail party conversation, and it makes great networking conversation. It makes great golf course conversation. Just talking about, I'm so excited about the different approach we've chosen from the rest of our profession. What do you mean different? Well, we've decided that we still do accounting, but our real focus is on how do we apply our vast depth of business acumen, our technical education, and our resources to partner with select business owners to help them make a lot more money with a lot less work. That's what makes us different. And since we've taken that on, we've had this happen and that happen. And you can have a conversation on the golf course with people like that and be excited about your difference. That's what I mean by being conversant in that difference. So step number one, identify the ideal client, why they're ideal, and the value that you bring to that ideal client. And then create conversation around it.
Good. So, so my second step for the 5 that I came up with is, okay, so now that you figure that out, who you want as a client, the next thing is, where are they? Locate them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's in obvious places, right? Sometimes, especially now with technology and Facebook groups and LinkedIn and whatever, you might be able to come up with ways to locate them that way, and online, and that's obviously that's something you help with, and we help people do when we take them on as consulting clients for to help them grow their businesses. But sometimes they're in places that aren't quite so obvious, but they make a lot of sense. So you mentioned golf. I watch the Golf Channel frequently, and the ads that come on there sometimes make me scratch my head a little bit, but they really shouldn't. So there's 1 or 2 financial guys who advertise on the Golf Channel. Ken Fisher Investments, who's a terrific direct marketer. He's been doing direct marketing for 20-something years and built a multi-billion-dollar company. He's one of the richest guys in the country. You see advertisements for gold. Sometimes you see NRA ads, because they kind of know who is watching this particular channel, and they
market.
So sometimes it's pretty obvious, but sometimes back when people flew, there was all those ads in the those Air Mile magazines or whatever they're called.
Yep.
And some of those are I remember there was one that ran forever. It might even still be running on how to incorporate your business yourself. That was that ran in the Sky Miles or
Sky Mile magazine.
Yeah. So you have to do some thinking about and maybe even ask your clients what magazines you read, what do you belong to, Facebook groups, etc. And that'll help you target them.
You just have to think, where are the conduits that touch the people that we're looking for? And again, I'm going to go back to the fishing metaphor. You have to know the fish that you're fishing for, and then you have to go after that fish at the right time of day and the right bait at the right time in the right place with the right thermocline. You have to understand where the quarry is and what that quarry responds to. And most people don't think that through. So once you identify the ideal client, and it's how am I going to get to them? Where am I going to find them?
Yep.
I'm working with one firm right now that has an in with something called the Plainview Mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a mothers group, and you can't just enter it, but they've done business with it, and they're talking them up within that, and it brings a constant stream of leads. So that you never know where you're going to find it, and if you think it out, you'll find a million different ways to reach out to people.
Yeah, and once you start generating leads from the Plainview Moms group, then you can go to the Dix Hills Moms group, and then that's I find that personally for our business. Even that I don't even I know I'm talked about in there. I haven't targeted them.
So worth it, yeah.
But that'd be worth it. Yes, that's a good idea. The third step you already kind of alluded to is, okay, now that you know who you want and you've located them, how are you going to get their attention? How are you going to communicate with them? And the wrong way is bragging about yourself.
Show up and throw up.
Right. Show up and throw up. We've been in business for 235 years, et cetera, et cetera. Or versus, here's what the Biden administration is going to do to your taxes, or how to avoid paying more in taxes in 21 than you did in 2020, or how to slash your taxes, how to et cetera, et cetera. That type of message, I would think, would attract people who feel like they're paying too much in taxes, which are generally people who make a living, who can pay you, right? How business owners can slash their taxes during the Biden administration.
It's very interesting. It's that even you who are pretty tax savvy, found a different kind of accountant that looked at your taxes through a different viewpoint. last year or two ago and found you a ton of tax savings by restructuring how you do business and where the money flows through and how it flows.
Yeah.
And by doing that restructuring, you saved a ton of money.
Yeah, and in his case, he's not even such a great marketer, but I've just known of him because he's written a ton of articles in every financial publication that you can think of, like Forbes and CNBC and whatever. And I've just known of him for years because he specializes in a niche market that I'm in also. And kind of, I knew about him, thought about him on and off. And then when we finally sat down, he showed me, it was actually, there was a triple benefit: lowering taxes, actually qualifying for aid, and health insurance, and lowering my health insurance premiums. It was amazing what he did. It was nothing, nothing weird. Not good. I don't think I'm going to be in an orange jumpsuit next time we talk.
No.
But he,
conservative, but completely
yeah. I mean, what I was going to say was by getting himself out there, that was bait to someone like me that I finally responded to, because I knew that he specialized in helping high-income business owners pay for college. Right. And I knew some of those strategies, but I'm not an accountant, so I couldn't go in depth. And he took an hour with me and my wife and showed us, I think it was a total of 4 or 5 things out of a universe of dozens that he typically goes to that really made a big impact. But I wouldn't have ever sought him out and raised my hand and said, yeah, I'm interested, had I never read his book or saw his articles.
What's interesting is I happen to know your ex-accountant also, who, when he asked me why you left, I told him. And he said, I could have told him all of those things also.
Right.
Well, you could have, but you didn't. That's the point. You weren't paying attention. You were absent that day. And that's what happens with a lot of the CPAs that we work with, is that they have so much knowledge, but they focus on getting the tax returns out the door or doing the financial statements rather than stepping back from the helicopter view and saying, okay, let's take a look at this person's life, what's going on in his world or her world, all right, and how could the tax laws be more relevant to saving them more money or helping them get where they want to go. And one of the things I keep stressing is that if I don't take the time to understand who you are as a person, yeah, and where you want to go with your life and your world, how can I possibly help you get there? If I'm only looking at your tax return, I'm only looking at your books, I'm only looking at those things, I can't possibly understand how what I know can help you get where you want to go, because I don't know where you want to go. I have no idea. Yeah,
and look at my own case, and not to bash my former accountant, who I actually think is a great guy. So it's not even personal. I was the one initiating all the tax planning meetings, and I want to come in and see what we can do, to get a snapshot, and you can advise me. Not him. And which is fine, but I don't recommend that as a business owner. There needs to be a better way to communicate proactively, and it's very easy to do that these days. And then when we had these meetings, the meetings would sort of go like, oh, well, gee, you're up. You're gonna have to put in, you have to pay $30,000 more in taxes than last year. That was our tax planning meeting. I'm like,
yeah,
that's not really helping.
No.
So I don't know what strategies he was withholding, but I shouldn't be the one initiating them.
Unfortunately, he's doing what many CPAs do.
Yeah,
is they are subconsciously working for the IRS.
Yeah,
subconsciously they're looking at how much are you going to have to pay, rather than how can I take the tax laws and use them to my advantage to reduce your taxes.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So then step number 4, after identifying your ideal client, locating them, and getting them to pay attention to you, the next part is your specialty, which is now that you have their attention, is converting them, is improving your sales skills. And I think if I were starting a new year and trying to figure out how to improve my results compared to previous years, it comes down to two things: is creating prospects and converting them. So understanding, and you are I look at you as the master of this, how to ask them the right open-ended questions to get them talking, to uncover their hot buttons and their problems, and then offer them a solution if they're the right fit, and communicating that we're not right for everyone. So there's a psychological dynamic there too of what we call the takeaway sale. I think that is a huge, for me personally, it was a huge game changer, and I think that can be for anyone if they just improve their sales skills and they're able to convert one more person out of every 10 that they meet with. That can make a big difference.
That increased closing ratio means everything. And it's not that hard to do when you take the time to learn how. The problem is you have to step outside the box that you built over the years. The comfort zone of how you've been going about doing it is not working the way it should. So you've got to step outside that comfort zone box and learn a whole different approach. And it's not really very hard. I'm going to give away a big secret right now. Anybody that's listening, if you're looking at working with a prospect, what you must do is help them understand in simple English. Forget your technical jargon. Nobody understands technical jargon. Help them understand in simple English how your relationship, an investment in and I'm being very specific, how an investment in a relationship with you is going to create an impact on the only two things everybody cares about. And that's their quality of life and their income. Because if you can't define how you're relevant to a prospect's quality of life and income, they're not going to figure it out. They're not going to sit there and say, well, okay, if he just does a little bit more of this and he does a little bit more of that, and I'll end up saving more money here and I'll have more money. They can't do that. They can't determine how your accounting services are relevant to their quality of life and income. And if you're not conversant in how a relationship with you is going to be relevant to my quality of life and income, you're just another next in my book, just another bean counter.
Yeah, one of my favorite Neilisms is sort of the flip side of that, not just communicating your value, but bringing them into an awareness of what they lack, meaning what they are not receiving because they are not working with you. And if they take a pass on you, how horrible their life is going to be. It's like the Ghost of Christmas Future. So once you drill that into my skull, probably 4 years ago, I started changing my approach. And by the way, not so much on the one-on-one sales meetings, but further up on the so-called funnel in the marketing messages, where, and again, I try to do all this stuff ahead of time before I actually invest my time to sit down with the client. So it's all the same message that you're talking about. I just try to do it more as a system. And when I give a presentation, there's ups and downs, and here's what you could get, here's the promised land, but if you don't take my advice, then this is what happens. However, the good news is, so that does a lot of the legwork for me ahead of time, and I think anyone can communicate that ahead of time. It's so easy. Like if I were an accountant, what I would be doing now is I would be doing something like what we're doing. I would be getting on a weekly, at least a weekly chat online on Facebook or something else, inviting my clients and my prospective clients to it, and just showing up every week and talking to them about here's what's happening, case studies, good and bad, here's what Congress could do, et cetera, et cetera. And that's going to get people very comfortable with you. And then you say, if you want to talk to me, here's how you can book a call with me. And then you're doing the whole funnel. And then at the end, you have that one-on-one conversation, and you say, look, I might be able to help you, I might not be able to help you. And you start asking them questions, and through that interrogatory and that discovery, you can communicate all the stuff that Neil just talked about, the value and more income and better quality of life.
One of the key questions that I've taught my accountants, and this is going to be a fun one, when they're sitting in front of a business prospect, and one of the first questions that I would ask if I were an accountant, I would say, "Oh, may I ask you a question?" And always get permission to ask questions. May I ask you a question, Andy?
Sure.
We believe that without a specific destination, any road will take you there. So that means to me, I need to understand what you want your life to look like 3-5 years down the road.
Yeah.
To be able to help you get there. I assume that your current accountant has talked to you about the importance of defining where specifically you want to go to be able to create a roadmap to get there.
Right.
He hasn't. Wow. So if he hasn't done that, I assume that he or she hasn't also helped you build a roadmap to go from where you are to where you want to be. No. Well, that's pretty natural. If they haven't talked about where you want to go, how can they talk about a roadmap? Those are some things that are really missing, because without that destination, without a roadmap to go there, what road do you take to get there? Are you just living on hopium, or do you actually have a strategic action plan?
Yeah, and that conversation is the higher ground. You're not talking about income taxes, 1040s, debits, credits, whatever. You're talking about aspirational things. And that's a whole nother conversation. And that's what you need to do to distinguish yourself. And
Which distinguishes you in real time.
Yeah.
It makes you different in real time. You don't have to say you're different. You're being different in real time because the level of conversation that you're using.
Yeah. And in my case, as a college advisor, my version of that is, well, listen, one of the things that's different about us is I'm not so obsessed with the 4 years of college. College is a launching pad for the next 40 or 50 years. So let's talk a little bit about that first, and then we can back into how you're going to get there via college. And I do that in my presentations, and I also do that one-on-one, and that's a showstopper. It's a pattern interrupter for people because none of my competitors does that. So
none of your competitors even think about that.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the scripting you just gave every accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It works not because it's a technique or a trick, because we really think that way. That's the way we look at things. This is really about the next 40 years of your life.
Yeah. Well, it's delivering value. That's what, just to circle back to what you said in the beginning, this is the real value of working with me. This is what you're going to get that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that could be helping you figure out your 3 to 5 year life's, aspirations and all that as a business owner or whatever business you're in. But accountants have a unique opportunity, I think, to communicate that value and to have that high level conversation.
No two ways about it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. So that was my 5. So I'll just sum up here: identifying your ideal client, locating them, crafting a message that resonates with them, which we call marketing. And by the way, that is over and over again. That's showing up over and over again with regularity. The 4th step is converting them to sales to high level valuable clients, and the 5th part is lather, rinse, and repeat. Make it a system. Run it on autopilot.
The more you make it a system, the more conversant you're going to become in your system. The better your system is going to work, and it's going to reach the point that you're at where you can turn the faucet on. Now, what you've been doing is, and you've been averaging how many inquiries?
Yeah, no, I tallied it up, and I told you I was a little surprised a couple weeks ago. It was 420 people filled out applications to talk to me. So I didn't.
Let me qualify that. That's the equivalent of 400 qualified prospects within the income range and business range that an accountant would look for. That would be like creating 400 inquiries from the best, when you identify your ideal client, that would be like creating 400 inquiries from your ideal clients in the course of 1 year.
Yeah, and to be fair, so there was some melt, about 10% I never met with, and then out of the ones that I did, that I did speak to, they weren't all qualified. Some of them sort of ignored the signposts that I had, what I thought were very blatantly laid out there. But it was too much in my case. Actually, too many people for me, and but it is a machine. I did it to myself because I would, in my case, I did a lot of advertising. I did a lot of presentations and a bunch of other things that caused people to raise their hand. And right now we're shut down. I mean, I've stopped temporarily because I'm like, I don't want to do that again. but I'm sure I'll get the itch again. and that's independent of referrals. Like people who come to us referred by other clients, they go through a similar funnel, but they weren't counted all.
What's interesting, there isn't a CPA firm out there that I know of, including some big national firms, that are capable of handling 400 qualified prospects in a year, because they don't have the people to go out and meet with them and close them, because they don't have the processes. So if a nice size accounting firm, if every partner in an accounting firm could generate 15 of those leads per year and only closed 3 of them, the growth would be phenomenal. And 3 is a terrible closing ratio. These things should be about 60 to 70%.
Yeah, it's a very low bar.
Yeah, it is. So we're not talking about creating 400 leads for a CPA firm. We're talking about creating 20 highly qualified, sincerely interested, exact type lead that you want. If you can create 20 of those in a year and you convert 15 of them, which is what you should be converting, about 15 of them, you're going to have a hard time keeping up with the business. Because I've seen it happen all too often, where they say, I want to put on $100,000 worth of new business in the next 6 months. And we bring in 3 clients and they're going, wait, no more clients. Why? Because we can't get the work out the door that we have now. So that tells me a lot of other things that can be helped. That means there's inefficiencies in the throughput process.
Yeah, well, that's an upcoming topic. You're going to take a mic.
What about that throughput process? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Profit leaks in your throughput process. But I think we hit the 5 topics today pretty well. And if anybody has any questions or anything, as usual, email us, call us. We'll be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, we'll pop it right in here in the comment section. All right, time's up. That was great, Neil.
Good morning.
Have a great week, everyone. Talk to you soon.
All right.